right. Shall we go into the question?
Yes, we had another call in. That's why we've just been so active.
So great. Thanks, everybody.
So let's see. I was doing my Nicole Scherzinger research, so I lost the speak pipe. All right. Ready for our listener question?
Okay. Hi, totally unqualified. It's your girl EJ, and I'm just calling because I would love to have Ellen and Ava's advice about when interviewing. How do you kind of successfully suss out the vibe, the culture of the company? How do you manage kind of like egos from the higher ups? What amount of ego from the higher up is like AKA normal, or like why AKA? Well, what percent is normal versus what's kind of like a toxic red flag? I would just like to know like what to kind of look out for in red flags in an interview, and how to successfully gauge when like there's a challenge ahead of you and there's like some opportunity, but just making sure it's the right opportunity, especially since we're at a point in our career where it's really great to try many things.
Yeah.
I think it's a good question because you feel like whenever you go to an interview or something, everybody's putting their best foot forward, which they should do. But then it becomes hard to gauge the vibe of the workplace because, like, what if everybody really is miserable and, hates each other and they're just putting on a front because they need more people, they need more help? I think that it's a really hard thing to try to figure out. And
isn't that what the internet is for? So she could go to Glassdoor, right? And Glassdoor has real people reviews of the places they work.
But some companies like are too small that they don't have them.
That
some are
is true.
Startups. Like a lot of it, as much as the internet can do for you, there also is this vibe of like, I also felt that previous places I worked, people on the Glassdoor would complain about things, and then I would have the job, and I would understand why those might have been their complaints. Mm-hmm. But it also felt like they didn't understand what they were signing up for. Like, you kind of have to understand that the people on Glassdoor are also unreliable.
No, I know. But I think maybe what you do is try and do research. So my first thing would be research, right? What can you learn as a 360 view of the company? Go on Glassdoor. Are there websites? Are there Instagrams about companies? Do you know anybody? You could go on your LinkedIn, see if you have anyone in common, or a friend of yours has a connect to someone who works there, right? It's always best to try and find someone who currently works there, and they will give you the skinny. So to me, you want the skinny electronically, right? Go to ChatGPT, put the company in. You never know.
You're obsessed.
I am, but you never know. It just sifts through everything that makes me not have to do it, although now Google does that. So do that. So that's one thing.
If that is not an option.
If that's not an option, right. So now I'm thinking about when you get there. Like, what would be a red flag when you're sitting there in an interview?
If they're late, that's always my first red flag. If somebody is late for the interview.
I don't know. I was always late. A little late. You're busy. You got a lot of work to do.
On a Zoom interview? Most interviews these days are on Zoom.
Okay. I was always late, but okay.
An in-person interview is different, though.
It is? I don't know.
Like, if you're sitting in a waiting room rather than sitting in a Zoom.
Okay, so you're saying late.
Honestly, it would be a red flag I would be a little bit. But also, I just want to say, you were interviewing for a higher level of people.
No, I'm talking about when I was interviewing other, assistants.
Yeah, I don't like that you were late.
I know.
It's not cool.
I can't.
And the assistants are so nervous and like.
Too bad. Sorry.
Not cool.
You gotta wait. You want the job, you gotta wait.
Not cool.
Okay, anyway, moving on.
Not cool.
Okay.
I see that attitude sucks. I tried my hardest to be on time, to be here presentable.
So did I, but I had things going on.
Mm-hmm.
You have
Yeah. Okay.
You might have a meeting.
Yeah, you're the only one.
I'm not saying I was always late.
It seems like you enjoyed being late.
I didn't care.
It's fucking rude.
Okay.
I would have been pissed.
Didn't care. Here's what I would say.
Okay. Our dentist is late.
Oh, it makes me so mad.
Oh, does it? Does it make you mad that our dentist runs late?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Oh.
So mad I've left. Okay, let's just get back on.
No, you want to get back on
No,
track
I
because
hear
you're
what
wrong.
you're saying. Maybe I was wrong. I hear what you're saying. Wait.
No, I was saying my red flag.
I was going to give a red flag. I think it's a red flag when an interview doesn't turn on their camera.
Oh my God, I would never work there.
I know people who it's happened to.
Oh my God.
And I think that is a red flag. Or if the person interviewing you is looking clearly not at you and they are doing their work,
yeah,
to me that is a huge red flag. That this is not a place that's going to value you.
Totally.
And this is not a place where you are going to be heard.
I also think that a really big red flag for me is making sure that whoever is talking to me knows what's going on. Like, I have been at companies where I felt like everybody was kind of all over the place and like nobody really knew what was happening, what was going on. When the person can't answer your question at the end, I think it's also a big sign. Like, even if they don't know the answer to the question, I've been asked questions in interview situations that I don't know the answer to, but you always say something. Like when they say, I don't know, like, oh my God, does nobody know what's going on here? Seriously.
I think that's a really good one because sometimes the person interviewing is like thrown the interview just because they're available, and that's not good.
No, horrible.
That's not good.
I also think, yes, I actually think that might be my biggest one. Like if they cannot answer your questions, which is why it's important to have well thought out questions. And also like,
yeah, but they should be asking you stuff. If someone doesn't really, sometimes they don't really ask you about you. They just tell you about the job. And I think that is not a good manager or a good company or an employee, I guess I should say, because they should really be asking you very specific questions about your skills, right? What are you able to do? What are you not able to do? And if they're like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Yeah, so here's the job. And then you're kind of like, wait, I never got to say anything about myself. This is weird.
I think that's weird too. I also think that it never hurts to ask, so what is the company culture like? I think a response to that question can speak volumes. If there's like an or a well, then you're like, oh God. Like if there's hesitation, right? Like whenever I talk about my job, I always say the first thing I say is like, I'm so happy at my job. Like you're not going to get that everywhere. But if I was not happy at my job, I would pause for a second and be like, you know.
It's also a little hard though, because this one person may not speak for the whole culture, right? Like maybe they're unhappy or disenfranchised in some way.
Which is why you consistently ask that across every interview.
At this particular company.
You ask everywhere. You ask every single person, what's the company culture like? You hope that it's consistent and you can see. Or if it isn't, then you kind of have to feel out the vibe.
Yeah, I also think keeping an eye out for the boss, like the big boss, particularly if you're interviewing at a small place, is very helpful. Seeing how the boss interacts with the other people and seeing the boss's reaction to something if you're just sitting there waiting because the person interviewing you is late. Mm-hmm. Because culture trickles down from the top, right? So a good head of a company or head of an organization trickles down how they act in a way that they believe the entire organization should act, right? So if you see a boss being rude to someone or not giving someone the time of day or being brusque, I think that's something to file away too.
The fuck is brusque?
You know, kind of rude.
I've never heard
Brusque?
that. Is that another one that you made up?
I didn't make it up.
What was the one last week? Toodle?
No, tout. No,
tout. Mm-hmm. Brusque, B-R-U-S-K.
I think it's BR.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Marked by rude or peremptory shortness?
Yes. Preemptory. So it's like you start to talk and I cut you off and say, oh, gotta go.
Oh, do you know how you spell it?
BR with a Q-U-E.
Yes, BRUSQUE.
I was going to say that, but you interrupted me.
Oh, wow. Okay, so yes, I totally agree with all the feedback. And I think a lot of it is also just like your gut feeling. Like, I think, do you imagine yourself within that space? Do you feel like there's something off? Do you feel like do you feel like other employees are withholding information from you? I think those are all good things to check in on.
So they seem happy. I think when you walk, you're not walking through the office. That is always helpful if you can do an in
Right,
person.
but I think that vibe is much easier.
In person.
Yeah,
it
like
is.
you can tell if a company
there's
is
good
happy.
vibe.
Yeah,
I know.
which is why Zoom interviews make it hard.
There's one other thing though that I do want to say, that sometimes maybe the vibe is bad, but the job is good. So I do think you have to weigh everything, right? Are you willing to work in a bad culture for a year because it's going to give you better skills, or it's going to help you
Right.
progress in some way? So I'm not sure you should always just cut bait if you feel it's going to be bad. You just have to go in with your eyes open, knowing.
Right.
That
And
it
I
might
mean,
not
it
be
also
great.
depends on what you want to get from the job. Like in the question that we got, it seems like having a strong company culture is important. Some people value
Yes.
that less.
Yes, or a strong, even if the company culture is bad, but your manager seems good,
Right.
that goes a long
Right.
way, right? As long as your person's like
Agreed.
watching out for you. I
Agreed.
think. So see how you vibe with the person you're talking to, who's going to be
Agreed.
your manager.
All right.
Okay.